Hey everybody, and welcome back to my channel. I'm happy to have you here today. It's a creative abstract watercolor exercise I want to share with you. I often work in my sketchbooks or sometimes just on loose papers, just in a playful way to experiment a little bit more with the paints I have, especially when these are new paints like the Rubens ones I'm having here. They are not brand new, but I haven't used them a lot. I used them in, I think, my past few videos, um, but not a lot. I don't know much about them. I want to know how they behave, if they are granulating, and then these creative little sketchbook exercises help me. And that's also a new sketchbook. I got it when I got the paints from Rubens in the past, and there is an extra video about the palette I got there, and I'm going to link that up in the video description if you are interested. And I'm working in this journal because I think that size is quite nice, and it's a cold press watercolor paper which has a lot of texture. And that's really good because then you can see if a color is granulating quite easily. For the left side, I'm just starting out with a circular shape. This is the shape I use most, I would say, or not most, but a lot in my intuitive and abstract watercolor painting work. And there is a video up from last week that you can watch where I do a full watercolor painting. I'm always incorporating a little bit of mixed media. Usually it's acrylic based markers, and sometimes I use other materials as well. And that's what I'm doing. I just intuitively grab the colors from the swatch sheet I have for this palette. I don't have a scheme in mind. I just play. You can, of course, just give yourself a certain color palette that you want to use and then experiment with this. You also can experiment, like I do it here, but not on purpose, with complementaries or with analogous colors. Yeah, you can experiment with whatever theme you want, or you just start just for fun. And that's what I'm doing. I'm just laying down paint. I don't really mind if the outcome is good, but of course it's always nice to have a lovely sketchbook to flip through. So some things that I've noticed are a bit important to get a good or a nice spread is to not fill the entire page with color, leave some white areas, or not white, but light areas. I think that is quite important. And here I've noticed that that brownish orange red, I don't know which color that is, has a very high flow. And that's really interesting to know. And I just made a cross or a plus to the color, and I decided to just note that down to the back side because there will come a time where I see that and don't know why I have added that plus sign, and then I know that this means this color has a high flow. I have color palettes in my stash where I intuitively know the colors that have this property because I've used them a lot, but with this new palette it's just hard to remember. I'm going to fill the right side as well, just because there is some drying time in between, and I don't want to wait until the page is dry. I just want to do something in the time between, and I'm just creating a similar spread on the right side as well. I really enjoy that process. It's so relaxing watching the paint move, experimenting, and especially if you're working in a sketchbook, um, you don't feel the pressure. I don't feel any pressure to create something good. I just want to create. I think because of my sketchbook practice, I'm drawing in my sketchbook each day. And I learned that it's absolutely not important to make a pretty piece of art every day. And also through my art journal practice, that's no longer important for me. And even if I'm painting on paper, I don't really worry about the outcome. But I think that's not the usual case. But I think in a sketchbook, if you're working in a small sketchbook, it's a really good place to play without being afraid of ruining the pages or the wasting any kind of paint, because you never use a lot of paint here. It's not usually not a very expensive sketchbook if it's that small. And I think that's a good way to just play intuitively without too much thinking. I've started on the right side, and here I'm going with analogous colors. I thought about just using similar tones instead of any complementaries here, just to see how this works out. That's also always a really good reference if you have a sketchbook with abstract work where you can come back to and use for a bigger painting. And whilst I made the right side in the sketchbook, the left side had time to dry. And that's what I really enjoy about working on multiple pieces at a time. I also always do it when I'm painting. I start with multiple paintings so I can work on the other whilst one is drying. And also sometimes there is a painting in a state where I don't know what I want to do next to it, or if it's finished or not, and then I just keep it and would work on another piece. That's why I always have about, I think, 5 to 6 watercolor paper pads that I'm working on. I always work on glued paper pads because that makes it easy to paint. You don't have to stretch it on a board, and yeah, I just can have as many paper pads on the go as I want. And I think that also loosens up the process a little, because if you only have one setup for one painting, it always keeps you a little bit under pressure that you have to finish that painting to start a new one. But maybe you have another idea, and I think then it's quite good to have multiple possibilities to work with. And here I'm experimenting. I have a look how good I can remove the paint from the page. That's also something that's quite important to know. But that, of course, all of these properties always also depend on the paper you're using. And I'm not using that paper for painting. But other than that, it gives me an idea, because some paints can't be removed that well. or some pigments. It always depends on the pigments also. And the granulation will show up on other papers just a little bit differently. And the movement also would be higher no matter what the paper is. But you just want to keep that in mind, that on some watercolor paper, I won't be able to remove the paint in that high amount of paint. I almost came back to the white here, to the white of the paper. And you can see with the red color, that doesn't work in the same way. And that's often because red is more staining. You might also have recognized that you have, if you have red watercolor in your mixing plate, that this will stain more than blues, for example. If you are enjoying this video, it would be really nice if you leave a lovely comment and give it a thumbs up. Now I'm doing the same on the other side. I'm trying to bring in some shapes by re-wetting the paint and then removing it. I just wet the paint, then I dry my brush, and then I pick up the leftover that is on the page. And here you can see that works quite nicely on this side. Maybe because there's just a thin layer of paint or the pigment is a little bit different. I think that orangish color is a bit hard to get rid of. That's the one with the high flow, I think. But that's also a good way in case you have added too much paint to your paper and you are missing some highlights. With watercolor, you can just re-wet it and try to remove it a little bit. And I myself, because I'm working a lot with mixed media, I also allow myself to just paint over it with a lighter color. I know some watercolor artists never use an opaque color and they never use white, but I don't consider myself as a watercolor artist. I would say, a mixed media artist, and I always use materials in the way I discovered them, and I have fun playing with them. I would never use materials because someone tells me I have to use them in a certain way. Um, and that's what I recommend. If you have art materials, you want to use them, you don't know how, play with them. Grab a piece of paper, open your sketchbook, and just play with the materials on your page, and you will learn what works for you and what doesn't, and what results you like. And you will discover more than just that. You will also discover probably a new color palette you like. You discover a brand new technique you want to use. And that's what I really recommend doing. I do this a lot, and since I've started doing that, I learned a lot. Even if I have started with an analogous palette, that spread moves a little bit to a complementary palette because I've added in a purple and more yellow shades. And that is also something that's really interesting. You work yourself towards the palette, and that's a palette I've used a lot in painting already in the past. I didn't plan that, but that's just something that always comes back to me intuitively. I don't know why. I'm not a purple fan, but I have paintings with a lot of purple in there. And I don't know, I just really like to paint with purple watercolor. And that's also interesting. I think you learn a lot about yourself and about what you like, what you don't like, because like with me with the purple, I've always told everybody I don't like purple. I would never paint in purple. And then I see myself just doing it. I'm really sorry if there is noise in the background. We have holidays here in Germany, and that's I'm a bit late with editing the video because of that, and um, everybody is at home at the moment, so it can be a little bit noisy. Something I want to mention, we have holidays. I'm going on holidays soon, and our stamp and stencil shop is on pause. That means it's open, but we do not ship anything. We don't pack orders at the moment. But there is a discount code, and you get 15% off everything, even on sale items, during the time we are not here. Just for your patience, I will give you the code in the video description and a link to the shop in case you want to check that out. Something else you can learn by playing is how good you can layer your watercolors, but that depends a lot on the paper. A little bit on the paints as well, but a lot on the paper. So some papers where the paint will reactivate quite quickly, there it's a bit difficult to layer up. And some papers where your paint won't reactivate as good, you can do some really great layering. And I think the paper that I'm using, it's from Gerstecker, the painting paper pads. And it's not that expensive. It's not the cheapest paper. But I love it because I can do all of these things. I'm able to remove some paint, but it takes a while to get them reactivated. And that makes me also able to layer paints. And that's what I use a lot in my intuitive watercolor painting work. Layers. I usually work in multiple layers to build depth and bring in interest. And these are all the things you learn by just playing. Of course, you can make these experimental paintings also on paper, and probably these will turn out as really lovely paintings, finished paintings later, smaller paintings. With this sketchbook, I've noticed that you can tear out the pages. That's quite interesting, I think. But then I think I've painted too big to tear out the page because I'm already close to the middle, and maybe to tear out the pages I should mask a frame around the page and then paint in the frame. That might be a good idea if I consider using some of them as a painting to frame it. If you would like to see my process of the abstract watercolor work, I invite you to join my membership. I've just uploaded a video where I just talk a little bit about what you get and where you find it when you join my membership. It's on a monthly basis, and there are already more than 60 videos up to watch instantly. So I think that's a really good deal. My pages are dry now, and I'm coming back in with a darker color. I wanted to make some marks. I often use acrylic markers for that, and I will do this on this page as well. But of course you can use the watercolors to do something similar. And I do that also. I always decide that on the go, which material I wanted to use. And here I just set some marks over the top. With that layering, you get in some depth into your abstract work. And I think that's quite interesting. I find it really hard to paint flat abstract painting without something that is sitting kind of in front of everything, uh, or things that are pushed to the background. I find that very difficult. I try that from time to time. Yeah, there will be probably a video at any time in the future where I just try it a bit differently. But usually I like to come back in, make some textural work on the painting, add mark making, scribbles, or motifs. I have applied the paint quite thickly on the left, and that will take some time to dry. And here I just grabbed some Neocolors, which go with the colors on my page, and I wanted to do some mark making. Another medium I really enjoy using within watercolor and mixed media are the Derwent Inktense pencils, and I sharpen them usually to a really nice tip, and then I dip in the nib into water, and then I use the pencil on my page. I think my main tool to do the mark making and finish up a piece are acrylic markers. And I mainly use Posca markers, but I recently also enjoyed the brush markers. I have some here from Ardex and also some from Enmai or Enmi. I don't know how it's pronounced, and I really enjoy using them. They are quite fun. They make different marks, and they come in a big variety of colors, and I think that's what I like the most about them. I now speed up the video a little bit so you don't get bored, because mark making takes a while, and this is a really relaxing and meditative process, and I really enjoy that. Sometimes I can't stop myself. Sometimes I just do too much, and I have to tell me stop, stop with the mark making, because it's such a relaxing and fun process. And I speed it up to twice of the time. I think that's quite important to know, because whenever I've watched an art lesson and I see artists doing things at a certain speed, I tend to maybe then think I have to work that quickly, but you don't have to. And it's always good to know that a video is speed up, because just seeing someone work that fast tells you a little bit to work that fast on your own project. And that's really good to think about. That's not this fast. I'm just working quite slowly and relaxing. It's not a hectic or stressful process. Yeah, I think I'm coming to an end soon with my mark making. I didn't want to overdo it. I will leave you with some photos of the finished paintings, and I think there will be a blog post on my website where you can have a look at the finished pages. I hope you find this video helpful and you enjoyed watching the process. In case you are also on holidays at the moment, I wish you some lovely holidays. Other than that, I wish you a lovely rest of the week, and hopefully we will see us next week. Bye.